Amir was 12 years old when he learned that childhood could end in a single night. The hospital corridor smelled of disinfectant and fear. White lights flickered above, and the walls felt colder than the winter outside. Amir sat on a narrow bench, his feet not touching the floor, swinging slightly as if he were still a child waiting for school to end. But school felt like a lifetime ago. Inside the room, machines beeped softly. His father lay on the bed, thinner than Amir had ever seen him, his skin pale, his breathing shallow. Just a few days earlier, his father had been strong lifting heavy sacks at the market, laughing loudly, promising to buy Amir a bicycle once things got better. Soon, his father always said. Just a little more patience. Now, that word soon felt cruel. Amir's mother stood beside the bed, her eyes swollen from crying, her hands trembling as she adjusted the blanket again and again, as if that small act could protect him from what was coming. She didn't speak much. She didn't need to. Her silence screamed louder than words. When the doctor finally left the room, he avoided their eyes. That was when Amir felt something shift inside him, a quiet understanding that no one had explained but his heart already knew. His father slowly opened his eyes and looked at Amir. "Amir, come here," he whispered. Amir stood up, his legs shaking, and walked to the bedside. His father's hand reached out, weak, rough, familiar. It was the same hand that had held his when they crossed busy roads, the same hand that had guided his pencil when he first learned to write his name. His father squeezed gently and said the words that would follow Amir for the rest of his life. "Be strong, you are the man of the house now." Amir didn't fully understand what that meant. How could a 12-year-old be the man of anything? He wanted to ask questions. He wanted to say he was scared. But the look in his father's eyes stopped him. It wasn't fear, it was trust. Amir nodded. That night, the machines went silent. And so did something inside Amir. The days after the funeral blurred together. People came and went, offering condolences, whispering prayers, leaving plates of food that slowly went cold. Everyone told Amir the same thing. "You're very brave for your age." But bravery wasn't something he chose. It was something forced upon him. When the house finally grew quiet again, reality settled in like a heavy shadow. His mother stopped singing while cooking. Bills stacked up on the small wooden table. The bicycle promise disappeared, replaced by unanswered questions about rent, school fees, and groceries. One evening, Amir overheard his mother crying in the kitchen. She tried to stay quiet, but walls in small houses listen carefully. "We'll manage," she whispered to herself. "We have to." That night, Amir couldn't sleep. He stared at the cracked ceiling, replaying his father's words over and over. "You are the man of the house now." The next morning, he made a decision. After school, instead of playing cricket with his friends, Amir stood near the traffic signal holding a small cooler filled with water bottles. His hands shook the first time he called out, "Cold water, cold water." Cars passed. People ignored him. Some looked away as if his struggle was contagious. But then someone bought a bottle. And then another. When Amir returned home with a few crumpled notes in his pocket, his mother froze. "Where did this come from?" she asked. Amir placed the money on the table and said softly, "I can help." She tried to protest. She tried to stop him. But when she saw the determination in his eyes, the same look his father once had, she broke down and hugged him. That night, Amir studied by the dim light of a flickering bulb, his fingers sore, his mind exhausted. Outside, laughter echoed from children playing in the street. Inside, a boy learned how heavy responsibility could feel. Days turned into months. Amir woke up early, went to school, worked after class, and studied late into the night. He learned how to calculate change quickly, how to read people's faces, and how to swallow disappointment without complaint. Sometimes, When exhaustion took over, he wondered if his father would be proud or if he would feel guilty for leaving him with such a burden. But every time doubt crept in, Amir remembered that hospital room. The hand in his. The promise unspoken but understood. And so, at 12 years old, Amir stopped dreaming like a child and began surviving like a man. By the time Amir turned 16, life had taught him lessons most adults never fully learned. His mornings began before sunrise. The call to prayer echoed through the narrow streets as he quietly rose from his thin mattress, careful not to wake his mother. He washed his face with cold water, the chill reminding him that sleep was a luxury he could no longer afford. By the time the sky began to lighten, Amir was already dressed for school, his uniform neatly pressed, though worn thin at the elbows. School was the only place where he allowed himself to feel normal. In the classroom, Amir sat in the front row, his notebook filled with clean handwriting and carefully drawn diagrams. Numbers made sense to him. Science excited him. For a few hours, he wasn't a struggling provider, he was just a student with potential. His teachers noticed. One afternoon, after class, Mr. Rahman called him aside. "Amir," he said gently, "have you ever thought about college?" Amir lowered his eyes. "We can't afford it, sir." Mr. Rahman studied him for a moment, then smiled. "What if I told you there might be a way?" A week later, Amir sat in the principal's office, his heart pounding. Papers lay on the desk, scholarship forms. His name was written clearly at the top. "You've earned this," the principal said. "But the college is in the city. It won't be easy." That night, Amir walked home slowly, the papers clutched tightly in his hands. The city felt far away, not just in distance, but in fear. College meant opportunity. It also meant leaving his mother alone. When he reached home, his mother was kneading dough for dinner. Her hair had more gray than before. Her cough, though quiet, lingered longer each day. He placed the papers on the table. She read them carefully, her fingers tracing each line as if afraid the words might disappear. "You should go," she said. Amir's chest tightened. "I can't leave you." She looked at him, then really looked, and smiled, the kind of smile mothers wear when they're hiding pain. "I didn't raise you to stay small because of fear," she said softly. "Your father dreamed of this, even if he never said it." That night, Amir heard her coughing behind the closed door. He sat on his bed, fists clenched, wondering how love could hurt this much. The city was loud, crowded, and unforgiving. Amir rented a tiny room near the college, bare walls, a single bulb, and a mattress that smelled of dust. The scholarship money was promised, but delayed. Days passed. Rent was due. His stomach often stayed empty. At night, he worked washing dishes at a roadside restaurant. His hands cracked from soap and cold water. The owner shouted often, but paid little. "Be grateful," the man said. "Others would take your place." Amir was grateful. Or at least, he pretended to be. During lectures, his eyelids grew heavy. He fought sleep like an enemy. He reminded himself why he was there. "This is the sacrifice," he thought. "This is the price of change." One evening, as he counted the few coins in his pocket, he realized he couldn't afford the bus ride home for the weekend. He sat on the steps outside the college, watching students laugh with friends, call their parents, plan futures that felt effortless. He pulled out his phone and stared at his mother's name. He didn't call. He didn't want her to hear the hunger in his voice. Months passed in quiet struggle. Amir sent most of his earnings home, keeping almost nothing for himself. His mother insisted he stop. "Take care of yourself," she said over the phone. He smiled even though she couldn't see him. "I am." But one night, exhaustion finally won. After working late, Amir collapsed on his mattress, his body trembling, his vision blurred. He hadn't eaten properly in 2 days. The scholarship still hadn't arrived. For the first time since his father's death, Amir whispered into the darkness. I'm tired. He wondered if sacrifice was supposed to feel this lonely. Yet, deep down, he knew something else too. Some dreams demand everything before they give anything back. The city seemed endless. Concrete walls, flashing neon signs, and the roar of traffic pressed in on Amir from all sides. Every day felt like a battle, a test of endurance he never asked for. One rainy evening, after 12 hours of work and study, Amir stepped onto the slick pavement. Rain soaked through his thin jacket, dripping into his shoes. The wind cut across his face like knives. Yet, he kept moving, forcing his legs to carry him home, carrying books and dishes in a single hand. His stomach ached. Hunger gnawed at him relentlessly, a sharp reminder that life hadn't become easier, only heavier. That night, he arrived at his tiny room, drenched and shivering. The flickering bulb barely lit the room, and the damp mattress offered no comfort. He dumped his wet clothes on the floor, too exhausted to even hang them. He sank onto the bed and let out a long sigh, one that carried months of fatigue, fear, and silent despair. Amir tried to study, forcing his eyes onto his textbooks, but the words blurred. He rubbed his temples. He had dreams, big dreams, but the weight of reality pressed down like 100 invisible hands. Suddenly, the scholarship office called. Amir's stomach flipped with hope. But the voice on the other end was cold, mechanical. There's been a delay. We will notify you when the funds are released. Amir closed his eyes. He felt the floor tilt beneath him, the world narrowing into a single point of frustration and helplessness. He walked out into the rain, unable to stay in the room that had become a prison. The streets were empty except for the occasional car splashing through puddles. His hands were numb, his feet soaked. And yet, he kept walking, as if movement alone could erase the ache inside. Hours passed. Amir had no destination. His body finally gave out. He collapsed on the wet sidewalk, the rain mingling with the tears he had fought to keep inside for so long. He thought about his mother. About the sacrifices she had made. About the promises he had made to himself. Was it all worth it? He felt anger bubble inside him, a bitter mixture of guilt, frustration, and exhaustion. How could a boy his age carry the weight of a lifetime? How could life be so cruel? For the first time, Amir allowed himself to cry, not the quiet tears he had shed silently at night, but the kind of cry that breaks something inside. A cry that shakes your body and soul, leaving you raw and exposed. He stayed there for what felt like hours, soaked, shivering, and broken. Passers-by hurried past, indifferent. Some looked down, some didn't. The world didn't stop for him. It never did. And yet, in the darkness, a small flicker of hope remained. A voice, soft but firm, cut through the rain and noise. Hey, are you okay? Amir lifted his head and saw an older man approaching, umbrella in hand. The man was retired, carrying no judgment, only concern. He helped Amir to his feet, guided him under the umbrella, and walked with him to a nearby bench. They sat in silence for a few moments, listening to the rain. I've seen life knock people down, the man said quietly. And I've seen it crush them completely. But the thing about life, you either let it define you, or you let it prepare you. Amir looked at him, confusion and exhaustion etched into his features. What do you mean? He asked weakly. Pain doesn't mean you're losing, the man said, placing a hand on Amir's shoulder. It means you're being prepared. Life is teaching you strength, patience, and courage. You don't see it yet, but one day, it will make sense. Amir nodded, unsure whether to believe him. But in that brief encounter, something shifted. A small seed of hope planted itself amid the storm of his life. That night, Amir returned to his room, soaked but alive. He curled up on the mattress and thought about his father, his mother, and the promise he had made years ago. His body ached, his mind was heavy, but he realized he couldn't give up. Not yet. Not when he had already sacrificed so much. Sometimes, the fall is necessary. Sometimes, you must hit rock bottom before you can rise. And for Amir, that night marked the lowest point, a fall so deep it could have ended his journey. But it didn't. It became the turning point. Because pain, when endured, can transform into resilience. The next morning, Amir woke to a gray, rain-soaked city. The night storm had left puddles in the streets, and the chill lingered in his tiny room. His body ached from exhaustion, and his spirit felt frayed, but somehow, he had survived. He forced himself to get up, wash his face, and attend classes. Every step felt heavy, every breath measured. The scholarship money was still delayed. The rent was overdue. Hunger still lingered. And yet, something inside him refused to break completely. Later that afternoon, while sitting under the college's courtyard tree, Amir noticed an older man watching him. It was the same stranger from the rainy night, the one who had offered him shelter and kind words. He approached cautiously, carrying a small thermos. "You need to eat," the man said, handing him the warm tea. "You can't pour from an empty cup." Amir hesitated, but the warmth of the tea spread through him. It was simple, ordinary, but for the first time in months, it felt like care. Not pity. Not charity. Care. The man introduced himself as Mr. Farouk, a retired teacher who volunteered at the city library and mentored struggling students. He had seen Amir sitting alone for weeks, watching the boys struggle silently. "You remind me of someone I once knew," Mr. Farouk said with a smile. "A young man who wanted to change his life but thought the world had already decided his fate. You have fire, boy. Don't let it go out." Amir listened, unsure how to respond. He had grown used to the world being indifferent, to kindness being rare. Yet, Mr. Farouk's words reached a part of him that hunger and hardship hadn't touched: hope. Over the next few weeks, Mr. Farouk became a mentor, a guide, and in some ways, a friend. He helped Amir organize his study schedule, introduced him to library resources, and even lent him small amounts to buy food when money ran out. One evening, after long hours of studying, Mr. Farouk placed a hand on Amir's shoulder. "You've been carrying too much alone," he said softly. "Sometimes, help doesn't make you weak. It makes you stronger." Amir realized how much he had been holding back, not just fear, but pride, guilt, and shame. He had thought asking for help was surrender. Now, he understood it was courage. Then, the day came when the scholarship finally arrived. Amir stared at the notification on his phone in disbelief. He read it over and over, tears welling in his eyes. The money would cover his tuition, books, and part of his living expenses. The weight of survival suddenly felt lighter, not gone, but lighter. That night, he called his mother. She answered on the first ring, her voice soft with worry. I got it," Amir said, barely able to speak through the emotion. "You did?" Her voice trembled. "Oh, my son. I couldn't have done it without some help. And I kept going, just like I promised." She cried softly on the other end. "You've made me proud every single day, Amir. Your father would be proud too." For the first time in years, Amir allowed himself to believe that his sacrifices were not in vain. The nights spent working, the hunger, the tears, all of it had shaped him into someone stronger, wiser, and more determined. Amir threw himself into his studies with renewed energy. He excelled academically, participated in projects, and started planning his future with intention instead of survival. Every challenge reminded him of how far he had come. Every small victory felt monumental. But the city still tested him. Some days were harder than others. Food shortages, broken machines, and delayed payments threatened to overwhelm him again. Yet now, Amir faced each obstacle differently. He had survived rock bottom. He knew that no storm could last forever. And through it all, he kept his father's words close. Be strong, you are the man of the house now. Only now, he understood what they truly meant. Strength was not just enduring pain, it was rising above it, learning from it, and refusing to let it define you. Amir's life was changing, slowly but surely. The hopelessness that had once threatened to consume him was replaced by determination. And although the future was still uncertain, for the first time in a long time, he could see a glimmer of light ahead. Because sometimes, the turning point isn't sudden. Sometimes, it arrives quietly through a stranger's kindness, a mentor's guidance, and a small victory that restores your faith in yourself. Amir was ready to take the next step. Not for himself alone, but for the promise he had made years ago to the man who had entrusted him with his legacy, and to the mother who had silently sacrificed everything. After 10 long years, Amir finally returned home. The city had given him education, struggle, and lessons in resilience. But nothing had prepared him for the sight of the small house tucked between narrow lanes, unchanged yet filled with memories. The paint on the walls had faded, the windows bore dust, but the home itself, his home, still stood. His heart raced as he approached the door. Each step felt heavier than the last. He thought of the countless nights he had spent away, studying, working, sacrificing. He remembered the hunger, the exhaustion, the tears. Every hardship had led him here, to this moment. When he knocked, the door opened slowly. His mother stood there, older now, her hair streaked with gray, her hands trembling slightly. But her eyes bright, warm, full of love locked onto his, and Amir felt a wave of emotion he couldn't contain. "Mother," he whispered. She opened her arms, and he stepped inside. For a long time, they didn't speak. They simply held each other, letting the years of struggle and distance dissolve into a single embrace. Finally, Amir stepped back, holding something behind his back. It was his college degree, polished and framed, the culmination of years of sacrifice, hard work, and unyielding determination. He placed it gently in her hands. "This belongs to you," he said softly, tears glistening in his eyes. "Every success I've achieved, every moment of endurance, it's all because of you." His mother ran her fingers over the frame, touching the embossed letters of his name and the college's seal. Her eyes filled with tears, and a soft smile formed on her lips. "My son, my brave son," she whispered. "I always knew. I always knew you would keep your promise." Amir sat beside her, taking her hand in his. He remembered the nights he had spent crying silently, feeling powerless. He remembered the rainy street where he had collapsed, feeling the weight of the world pressing down on him. He remembered the words of the stranger who told him that pain is preparation. And now, all those moments, the suffering, the fear, the loneliness, made sense. They had led him here, to this home, to this moment of fulfillment and peace. That night, as they sat together, his mother leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes. She smiled faintly, a serene calm washing over her face. Amir noticed her breathing slow, her hand slipping slightly from his. He held her tightly, realizing that this time, he was the one to protect, comfort, and carry her. When she passed away quietly in her sleep that night, Amir felt a deep ache, but not just of loss. It was the ache of completion. Her journey, her sacrifices, and her love had not been in vain. He had fulfilled the promise he had made so many years ago, and in doing so, he had honored both his mother and his father. Amir cried not just from grief, but from relief, love, and a profound understanding of life. Every hardship, every tear, every lonely night had led to this moment of closure. He stayed by her side until the morning light filled the room, the soft golden rays illuminating the small, humble home. And in that quiet, sacred space, he felt a sense of peace he had never known. He whispered a promise to himself. I will live fully, love deeply, and honor their sacrifices every day. Amir left the house that morning, not with sorrow, but with purpose. He walked through the streets he had once struggled in, the city that had tested him, and finally, the world that had shaped him. He carried his mother's love, his father's legacy, and his own resilience in his heart. Sometimes, life breaks you. Sometimes, it tests you beyond what seems bearable. But sometimes, if you endure, if you keep promises, and if you never give up hope, it rewards you with a moment that makes every hardship worth it. And for Amir, that moment was here. He had survived. He had fulfilled his promise. And in that fulfillment, he discovered the true meaning of love, sacrifice, and strength. The tears he shed now were not just for loss, they were for life, for hope, and for the enduring power of the human spirit. Broken heart.